My name is Brian, and I'm trying to change the way that Bitcoin personal finance is perceived on YouTube and on Twitter and on the internet as a whole. Because the more I think about it, it's confusing that like real estate influencers just look at you and in their video and they're like, real estate is the path to financial freedom. And they just like go on and on about their bullet points of like why real estate is like such a good asset class, right? And they can compare to other asset classes. And then Bitcoin influencers just talk about like all of this stuff of like macroeconomics and then are like, but never sell. And the more I think about that, that's like extremely confusing. That's extremely confusing. And I think I've been part of this problem. I've been part of the problem of like, because is Bitcoin is a lot of things, right? It's doing a lot. Like if you ask anyone, what is Bitcoin, they'll give you different answers. And that's not the same for like stocks doesn't have that problem. Real estate doesn't have that problem. And so it makes sense. It makes sense, right? And I've even said in other videos, like Bitcoin is so interesting to me because it is such a great like personal investment, but then it also is such an interesting like philosophical movement of just this concept that we actually can design and make better money with software. Like we actually can do that. And then the downstream effects of society running on better money with a monetary policy that is known by everyone and not influenced by a committee of people, the downstream effects of that on society are huge. Like they're hugely groundbreaking, right? And so that's why so much Bitcoin content gets thrown into these like two buckets where it's just like charts up and down of like the crazy volatility prices, because it is the fastest horse in the race. Like it's the most free market in the world because it trades 24/7 across every fiat currency that's out there. And then there's also all the videos that are talking about the like political and like social and like societal impacts of Bitcoin, again because the downstream effects of having society run on a more like better money are huge, right? So that's why there's so much disparity on the type of content, right? And then also to throw in another layer on the mix, like altcoins and other cryptocurrency has its own vibe and its own rabbit holes, multiple thousands of different rabbit holes that you can go down on what even is that and what are altcoins trying to do and what is cryptocurrency trying to do, right? And so it makes sense that there are some people that are skeptical of Bitcoin, and I won't even say like skeptical. I'm not talking to just like outright Bitcoin skeptics. I'm more just talking to like financially knowledgeable people. Like it's always been interesting to me why there hasn't been more uptake on the concept of Bitcoin in the personal finance like community and in the real estate community, honestly, to like be true, because real estate and Bitcoin both benefit from the same mechanism, which is that fiat money is infinite. Fiat money doesn't have a cap. Fiat money is controlled by this committee of people that chooses the supply of it. And that's how interest rates are determined. I'm glossing over a lot, but loosely, that's how interest rates are determined. And that's the main mechanism that like impacts your ability to, do real estate deals. And so Bitcoin like benefits from the fact that fiat money is infinite because it gives it product market fit of being the better money in the world. And so there's a ton of benefit there, right? And it's always confused me on why Bitcoin hasn't gotten more uptake in the personal finance community. And I've kind of arrived at that, or I've arrived at a new answer for that. And it's like, you know what? Because saying never sell is confusing. And because talking about the concept of an investment and having societal impact at the same time is hard and confusing. That is new. Like that's not a paradigm that people are used to when hearing about their investment decisions, right? And so the fact that I and a lot of others like would ping pong back and forth between both concepts really, really fast, you know what? It makes sense. Like it makes sense. And something I'm trying to do in 2025 is just kind of enter with a little more just humility a little bit, but also just a fresh brain, like a fresh brain of just like, okay, so all that being true, what would it look like then to talk about Bitcoin to the personal finance community? And it would look like this of just saying like, look, like Bitcoin has a monetary policy that is flat and known by everyone. And that's the reason why you're able to participate in it without having to worry about what the committee that controls the supply of dollars and the interest rate and all that stuff does, right? And then but one thing on that though, it is the fact that it hasn't separated itself from the stock market and there's is frustrating and annoying and interesting, right? It's just information. The fact that Bitcoin has not been able to separate itself from the stock market, makes it so that it is kind of all the same trade, right? I'm blanking on, there's a really good YouTuber, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he always says this. He's like, it's always this, it's all the same trade. It's all the same thing. And it all has to do based on interest rates, right? And to that's almost why the real estate people have a good point. The real estate people have a good point in that real estate is separate in its own bucket. Real estate and stocks are not always correlated. They're not always correlated. And home prices just are not always correlated to the stock market. And even when there is issues and problems with mortgage rates being high and whatever, that also doesn't directly impact home prices, which is why real estate is a really interesting asset class. And so I think when Bitcoin personal finance people try to say just wholesale, Bitcoin is better than real estate in every single circumstance, that's honestly just a blow to the credibility of again the small field of Bitcoin personal finance that there is. There's not very many people that are even trying to look at personal finance as a topic through the lens of really believing that Bitcoin is better than fiat money. You have personal finance influencers that will cover Bitcoin, but you don't have a ton that are I believe Bitcoin is better than fiat money, and I also am thinking fresh thoughts about Bitcoin personal finance in general. That's not a thing. If that is a thing, tag me and show me where that is, because I want to watch that channel and I want to subscribe to that channel and bring signal to that, because that's what I wish was available. That's what I wish was available. And so, yeah. So what does all that mean? Basically, all that means is there's okay, so all of that, that entire preamble, right? Probably deserves another video, but that entire preamble is what then gives me the ability to here's something I want to talk about. In real estate, there's a concept of return on investment versus return on equity. And it has to do with your initial investment grows at X%, and you can say that we like to talk about the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin, right? And the compound annual growth rate of your initial investment is growing at X% per year, totally. But then the compound annual growth rate of your equity, another term would be house money or whatever, or your gains, from today, what is the growth potential of that, right? And it's still pretty high. I believe the hurdle rate of Bitcoin is still pretty high, but here's what's starting to click over in my brain. And honestly, real estate, I'm suffering this with our rental properties as well. It's that there could be better opportunities. The whole concept of for a long time, I've thrown rebalancing into the bucket of diversification. And to be honest, I don't love diversification. I don't love the concept of just kind of index funds and that stuff like that. I definitely like the concept of I'm bullish on Bitcoin and I'm bullish on real estate. And I believe that both benefit from the conditions of the world and what I believe about fiat money being infinite. That's what, and then you dig into it and you're yeah, I don't mind the volatility of Bitcoin because that's what gives it massive potential. And then I don't mind the stability and income of rental properties, especially when you can buy them with mortgages and 95% leverage. That combo together gives me a reason to both those things. But what if there is an ability to rebalance them into a different opportunity, again, within Bitcoin and real estate, because the equity, the return on equity is lower than what the return on investment of a new opportunity could be. And that's the new area that I'm trying to level up my brain on. I don't have an answer to that yet because it's not a muscle that I've worked before, is that ability to kind of rebalance from a really good set of decisions into that next leveling up decision.